All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. I'm Sean Rogers here at Zyxel Communications, and today we are doing our new partner introduction. So this is sort of a general overview on Zyxel products that we put together for those of you that are new at selling Zyxel products, or those of you that have been selling one of our product lines and are looking at expanding into some of our other product lines. So we're going to do sort of a high level overview of all of the different products we have, give you some tips and tricks, explain some things with our naming, and give you some background on who Zyxel is. So I'll go ahead and get started now with that. As we go through, feel free to send in questions using either chat or the question and answer part of the Zoom interface. So we'll start with a little bit of background on who Zyxel is. Zyxel has been making computer networking products since 1989. Our corporate headquarters is based out of Hsinchu, Taiwan, and our U.S. headquarters has been based out of the Anaheim area since 1989. That's where we still are. So Anaheim is where our offices are. It's where our warehouse is. So it's where our products come from. It's where our sales guys call you out of. And if you call in for tech support, you are talking to Zyxel employees at our Anaheim location. We don't outsource support to a third party or overseas, at least during business hours. We have produced over 100 million different devices over the years, um, and we serve 150 different global markets. So for North America, again, as I said, our office is in Anaheim, California. That covers the US and Canada. Mexico, technically part of North America, that is actually handled by our Central American office based out of Guatemala. Um, And then we've got offices throughout the world. Our biggest area where we do most of our business today is in Europe. When it comes to our R&D, our primary R&D center is in Hsinchu, Taiwan, but we do also have R&D facilities in China and in Germany. It helps us with developing the code and the products that we sell. So Zyxel Communications, Zyxel Networks, the Zyxel Group. So these are all different parts of the Zyxel Group. So Zyxel Group is our parent company. Zyxel Networks is actually who I work for. So Zyxel Networks is a company that is focused on selling products into the channel, specifically things like switches, firewalls, wireless access points, etc. Our sister company, Zyxel Communications, are focused on the telco business. So their primary business is selling CPE devices to internet service providers. And here in North America, that is historically where most of our focus has been. Um, so if you have run into us before, good chance, or if you don't think you've run into us before, a good chance that you actually have in the products that are provided to you by your ISP. We work and have worked with a lot of the biggest ones here in North America. And obviously there is some overlap between those two channels. So for instance, Zyxel Networks here, we are soon going to be selling GPON COE equipment and CPE equipment that is different than the GPON equipment sold by Zyxel Communications. So, that always does cause a little bit of confusion, and the occasional little bit of, who do I talk to type of thing. So as a general rule, if it's office networking type stuff, you talk to the Zyxel Networks team. If it's CPE for ISPs, you talk to Zyxel Communications. MitraStar is our manufacturing arm. So they are based out of Taiwan as well. And that's where most of our manufacturing is done from. Although we do have some factories in China, and we do, depending on the product, use third-party contract manufacturers located in various countries, depending on what the product is. We've got a number of other sister companies that I won't talk about today. So just to try to help visualize here, the differences here is Zyxel Communications, again, is primarily focused on ISP, and at least in North America on CPE, and Zyxel Networks is focused on business and home networking, primarily the business networking these days. We've been getting out of the home networking space for the last couple of years. And in general here, our vision is to provide products that are high quality, featuring advanced features and keeping the price affordable. So a little bit more background on us here. Again, just to hit up here, 35 years in networking, including everything from consumer type products all the way up to enterprise grade equipment. Um, we have our own R&D facilities. We aren't relying on third party or to do our designing for us or coding for us, etc. And so we tend to have very consistent when it comes to a lot of consistency when it comes to the features, when it comes to the management interface and the quality of the products itself. And of course, the first area we're going to start talking about today is Nebula, which was the first SMB full stack cloud management solution on the market. So let's go ahead and talk about that just a little bit more. So what does that mean? Well, full stack meaning that you're using the cloud to manage all of the core components of your network. Back when we launched Nebula, all the way back in 2016, believe it or not, um, really the only full stack solutions were aimed at the enterprise space, and there were one or two, say, SMB focused solutions that were focused entirely on just on access points and nothing else. So when we launched in 2016, we were the first ones targeting that SMB space, and at that time providing management of switches, firewall gateways, and access points. And of course, we've continued to evolve and improve Nebula since then. So let's talk a little bit more about Nebula. Nebula gives you a unified and centralized area to control your network devices and have visibility on your customers' networks. There's no additional software or hardware controller needed. The agent to work with Nebula is built into the hardware itself. So there's no cloud keys, there's no CNA devices, there's no virtual machines that need to be set up. You simply plug in the hardware and it talks to the cloud, and that cloud is run by us. It is hosted in Amazon AWS for reliability. Very little downtime on that. So a common question people do get is what happens if it does go down, or what happens if, the fiber connection to the office goes down for a couple of days? And the answer to that is Nebula, all your products continue working, even if they can't reach the cloud. You just obviously can't go in and make any configuration changes until that cloud connection is back up. So installing Nebula hardware is pretty easy. It's just plug it in and go. Agents built into the hardware. And again, it just talks to our cloud. So Nebula Cloud Management is available for free. There's no limits on how many devices you can manage or how many customers you can manage using the Nebula Cloud. So one of the nice things here with Nebula is it was designed from the ground up for multi-site, multiple customer management. Our interface makes it really easy to jump between customers and jump between sites underneath your customers. Unlike some of the other SMB solutions that are out there, which require different logins and different accounts for each customer you want to manage. So the Nebula process to get to going into using it is pretty easy. Log into Nebula, nebula.zyxel.com. Create an organization. That'll usually be you'll have one organization per each customer of yours. Create sites that you want to have under those customers if they have multiple locations. Get your Nebula hardware, scan the QR code that can usually be found on the outside of the box, if not on the belly label of the product itself. Assign that device to that customer and to that site. Plug in the hardware. It will automatically reach out to the cloud, see you want to manage it in the cloud, put itself into cloud management mode. And from that point on, you can manage your customer and their networks. So as mentioned there about scanning the QR code, we do have a free mobile app available for iOS and Android phones, not for tablets. It's just for phones. And basically it allows you to onboard devices pretty easily, gives you some high level overviews of what's going on your customer's network, give you some ability to make some minor changes to the wireless network and do some basic troubleshooting. Although I do want to highlight here, your primary means of managing your networks is through the web browser using the Nebula homepage. Just because we're doing SMB networks, we've got some advanced configuration, and it's really too hard to do that all through a mobile app. But the mobile app's there for you to help keep an eye on things as well as get alerts if your devices go offline. So again, no additional hardware or software is required to use Nebula. So I want to talk briefly here about the term Nebula Flex. You will see this a lot. So back when we first got started with Nebula back in 2016, we copied the Cisco Meraki way of doing things, where if you wanted a cloud managed piece of hardware, you bought Nebula. If you didn't want cloud managed hardware, you bought standard Zyxel equipment. So at Cisco, it was you bought Meraki or you bought Cisco, depending on what management style you wanted. We realized quickly that that didn't really work that well in the SMB space. So instead, we've introduced Nebula Flex. And all that means is that our hardware is flexible in allowing you to either manage it the traditional way or to manage it in the cloud. So by default, out of the box, the hardware is going to be in standalone mode where you would manage it by going to the IP address of the hardware, accessing the web GUI, accessing it via SSH, using SNMP, whatever your standard way of managing hardware has been. But if you do want to manage it in the cloud, it's really simple. As I mentioned before, you simply use the mobile app, scan the QR code, and assign the device to a customer in site. And the hardware, after a few minutes, will automatically detect that you now want to manage it in the cloud, and it will put itself into cloud management mode. And if at any point you want to go back to standalone or traditional management ways, you just remove it from the Nebula cloud. It puts itself into back into standalone mode. So really easy to switch modes. Now, one key thing here for you is that configurations are independent between the two modes. So when you switch modes, you do have to reconfigure the device. In the case of putting it into cloud mode, it will automatically download however you've got your cloud network set up. It will automatically apply that. And then if you put it back in standalone mode, it'll factory default itself. So you could then load a previous config or configure it from scratch. So when it comes to licenses, there are some optional licenses that are available for you. So the core version of Nebula and out of the box, what you get is Base Pack, which is the free version of Nebula. It gives you access to all of the standard configuration options you'd expect to find on your hardware. And again, there's no limit to the number of devices or sites or customers that you can manage with the free version of Nebula. But we do offer Plus Pack and Pro Pack as options for you to upgrade to. And these are primarily aimed at adding additional cloud functionality or storage or additional tools to help you troubleshoot your customers' networks. So, primarily aimed at those of you that are offering MSP services, where you're providing active management of your customers' networks on a monthly basis. So, Plus Pack is our cheaper one. It was primarily aimed to target like Netgear's cloud solutions and some of the other smaller SMB type systems that are out there. Pro Pack is what most of our customers buy, and that gives you the most functionality that's available out there. In addition to Base Plus and Pro, we offer something called MSP Pack. So Plus and Pro Pack licenses are done on an organization basis. So you apply licenses to all the devices in an organization to then convert that organization to Plus or Pro Pack. MSP license is based on your admin account. So it unlocks additional features based on that admin user. So in general, you would have only one or two of these on your primary, whoever the boss is that's running your MSP solution to give them access to some of those extra features. So those extra features are things like getting email push alerts, even on free versions of Nebula, um, giving you access to the ability to create teams to make it easier to manage your admin users across different sites, things like that. So if you want to learn more about the different licenses, the different features of them, I do a monthly introduction to Nebula webinar where we go through a lot of the line by line, the feature differences between free, plus, and pro. You can also find it on our website. Just search Nebula Pro Pack, and it should pull it up for you, a little comparison chart showing you the feature differences. But again, in general, most of our users are using the free version of Nebula. It provides all the functionality most of you need. So this is just trying to highlight for you here all of the different products that can be managed in Nebula. It's not kept 100% up to date, but it's got most of the newer products on there. So you will notice here across the top, these are all Nebula Flex products. So can be used in the cloud or standalone. So our NWA series access points, our 1915, 1920, 1930 series switches, and our USG Lite security routers and our USG Flex H series products, which are being sold as hardware only. We also have products you'll see here. These are called Nebula Pro or Nebula Flex Pro. So all that means is if you see a product labeled Nebula Flex Pro, is it's telling you that it's got a 1-year Pro Pack license bundled with the hardware. So that's all of our access points that start with the letter W. It's our 1350, 2200 series, and 3800 series switches. And then it is our security appliances when you buy them as a bundle pack, which includes the UTM licenses. It also will include 1 year of Nebula Pro Pack. So again, that's just a bundled license. You can always buy that license separately and upgrade any of these other products to Nebula Pro Pack. Now, for those of you that don't like to do cloud management, there is still the ability to do standalone management of your products. So you can access them directly. In the case of our wireless access points, our W series access points can be used with a local controller, and that local controller is built into all of our USG Flex series security appliances. So you can go with a whole complete solutions package there doing local management. We also have the Zyxel One network and some various tools to make it easier to discover products on your network, what IP address they have, and do bulk firmware updates on those standalone devices. So moving on for management now, we'll start talking about the hardware, and we're going to start by talking about our wireless LAN products. So we've basically broken our access points into three different categories, and we'll talk a little bit about what the different categories are. So the NWA series is split into two different product lines. What I'm going to call the 2-digit line, the 50 and 90 series products, and then everything 100 and 200 and up over here on the right. And the primary differences here is the 50 and 90 series products are primarily aimed at the SOHO space. So they're going to be missing some of the business class features that you may be expecting. So for instance, the 50 series access points do not offer captive portal functionality. The NWA 90 series products do offer captive portal, but they are missing some other features such as AP load balancing. And these come with a 2-year warranty. Well, all of the rest of our products come with a lifetime, or access point products come with a lifetime warranty out of the box. So that's just something to keep in mind when you're looking at the different product categories. The 50 and 90 series may be missing some features that you're looking for from a business perspective and have less of a warranty. Going up to the 100 and 200 series, they get our full business class feature set, such as AP load balancing, captive portal, all of that. And these all come with a lifetime warranty. And then the step above that is our W series products. So these W series products are our sort of like our heavy duty true business class access point. So these take that full business set of features that are offered here, and they upgrade these products in general to have our advanced antenna technologies. We will talk about that. So most of these models will come with either a smart antenna or what we call a dual optimized antenna. Or in the case of our wall plate APs, they will have some additional functionality that allows you to use these in a hospitality situation. These all support controller management. So if you don't want to use the cloud, but you still want some local controller because you've got a lot of access points, W series supports that as well. And of course, they come with a lifetime warranty. So we'll talk briefly here about antenna technologies. So when it comes to our products, we offer static antennas, dual optimized antennas, and smart antennas. So most of our competition out there basically just offers static antennas. Ruckus offers smart antenna. They call theirs BeamFlex Plus. So a Ruckus BeamFlex Plus is very similar to our smart antenna as far as the hardware goes. And I think we're the only guys offering this dual optimized antenna. So we'll talk about this really quick for you. So your traditional access point has one set of antennas in there that have a fixed antenna pattern. And usually they're designed with the idea that you are mounting this access point on a ceiling above the area to be covered, and it broadcasts out in a roughly umbrella-shaped antenna pattern to the area underneath it. Now, one of the challenges you run into is you often don't get to mount your access points on the ceiling for whatever reason. You have to settle for mounting them on a wall. Now, the challenges with mounting it on a wall is the antenna pattern is optimized to be above the area and pointing down, and you've now rotated it 90 degrees. So you're sending a lot of your signal up into the ceiling and down into the floor where it's either lost or in a multi-story building, depending on the construction, can cause interference on the floors above and below you. So our solution to this is that dual optimized antenna. And basically what we do is we give you access points with two sets of antennas, one for your traditional ceiling mount and one that's been optimized for wall mounting your access point. And then we give you the flexibility to choose on a per AP basis which antenna pattern you want to use. So if you mount it on a wall, no problem. You just switch it over to wall mode. Mount it on a ceiling, switch it over to ceiling mode, and it optimizes that antenna pattern for that usage. Now, the other thing we have here is our smart antenna technology. So this is a little bit different here from what a lot of people offer. And basically what it does, I'm just going to blow through these slides really quick until we get to here we go, is it basically, instead of having one or two set antenna patterns, it has what we call an antenna array. And it's able to handle hundreds of different antenna patterns from the access point. So we have an algorithm that looks at where the access point is and where the client is and is in relationship to that access point. And what we do is we choose the antenna pattern that optimizes the signal to push it towards that client. Now, one of the cool things that we also do, and this is very different from some of our competition, is our algorithm also looks for sources of interference. In this diagram, it's a microwave, which uses 2.4, but it's sources of interference are very common out there, whether we're talking other access points, other wireless devices, industrial equipment that puts out RF noise, etc. So what we can do is optimize that antenna pattern to ignore sources of interference, creating a better coverage situation. And in things where you've got a lot of access points in the same area, such as hotels or conference rooms, by using smart antenna, you can actually achieve greater than 100% airtime utilization because you can have access points broadcasting on the same channel, not interfering with each other because of how they're doing the antenna patterns. So to use smart antenna, it requires nothing special. It works with any wireless client, including those that are mobile. So the client doesn't just have to be still like some other technologies that are out there. Our technology will work even with mobile users as they walk around the floor. So our access points are going to be built a little bit different from our competition. If you've been to some of our trade shows, we may have shown this to you in person. I know we used to travel to trade shows. We had one of our access points. We had an equivalent Ubiquity and an equivalent Ruckus, and we had the screws removed so we could open them up and show you and see what we were talking about. But in general, all of our access points operate on what we call an RF first design. So what that means is if you open up and look at our board, you will find a lot more shielding on our board than you find with our competition. And that's just not only to help with EMI issues on the board, but it's also been designed specifically to filter out 4G and 5G cellular signals. And the reason for that is because modern 4G and 5G may be using frequencies that border the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz spectrum that Wi-Fi uses. So if you're talking about in a home or something like that, that's not generally going to be an issue, right? Unless the tower's built in your backyard, it's not an issue. But in bigger business buildings, this is an issue. So what happens is 4G and 5G generally don't penetrate very far into today's modern, newer buildings. Um, the metal coatings they put on the glass, for instance, tend to block out the signals in addition to infrared. So what happens is you use what's called a DAS system, DAS, and that distributes an outdoor cellular signal inside the building. So basically, you've got access points inside the building that are broadcasting 4G or 5G signals. And often because, there's a limited number of cable drops or access panels in a building, these will be positioned very close to where you're positioning your Wi-Fi access points, and you will get interference issues. So this helps in those scenarios to help reduce that sort of noise. The other thing you will find is that our antennas are not usually mounted onto the main PCBA. We have them on their own separate board and usually have a RF shield between the main board and the subboards that mount our antennas to create greater isolation for those antennas. Another thing we do differently, and this is why we can offer access points at $120 with a lifetime warranty, is we design our products to last. So one of the things we do is we do not use electrolytic capacitors. We only use solid state capacitors because electrolytic capacitors are known to fail, to dry up, to leak, to do stuff like that. So we get rid of it. Another common cause of failure in solid state equipment is what we call heat fatigue. So in order to help reduce the chances of that happening, you will find our access points, in addition to having a lot of vent holes to allow the heat to escape, Almost all of our access points will have a large metal heat shield underneath the main PCBA designed to draw heat off the main board and vent it out those holes. Where you look at some of our cheaper competition that only offers a 1 or 2 year warranty, not only will they not have any sort of heat sink to pull the heat off the board, they won't even have vent holes on their housing to allow the heat to escape, which is why they can't offer a lifetime warranty. So that's it as far as access points go. I know I'm going quick here. Next up, we're going to start talking about switches. So the first thing I want to talk about is our naming conventions, because we've got a lot of switches out there. And our naming conventions will help you by when you're looking at the price sheet or when you're looking at distribution, will help you figure out what the features of the switch are. So if you know what features you're looking for and you know our model naming, you can very quickly limit or filter down to just those switches that are going to do what you want. So to start with, all of our switches have a prefix, either a 2 or 3 letter prefix. And that will tell you the speeds of the switch itself. So an ES switch is only providing fast Ethernet ports. RG, we don't normally sell that much here in North America, but the RG series is our rugged switches, and those are all 1 gig. GS is our standard switches, and those all provide gigabits, all gigabit ports. Our MG switches, the ports will be all 2.5 or better multi-gig outlets or ports. XGS. So the GS tells you that most of the ports are 1 gig, and the X is telling you that there are 10 gig uplinks on that switch. XMG. So the MG is telling you most of the ports are multi-gig, 2.5 or 5 gigabit, but there are also still 10 gig uplink ports on those switches. And then XS is telling you that all of the ports on that switch are 10 gig. And then if you look at the end of the switch name, we have some suffixes that we use. So HP is telling you that it provides PoE plus or PoE plus plus PoE power. EP is PoE plus or PoE plus plus, but the E is standing for eco, meaning that the switch has a lower power budget. So one of the big expenses with PoE switches is supporting the PoE budget. A lot of money goes into that. So if you're one of those users, you need 24 ports, but you don't need PoE on most of them. Going to an EP will save you some money, but give you a lower PoE power budget on the switch. And then FP is what stands for full power. And that's providing larger budgets, with the idea being that you can provide PoE power across all ports on that switch, no problem. And then the letter F is telling you that that switch is purely a fiber switch. So all ports on that switch are going to be SFP or SFP plus. So now we'll start talking about our desktop switches. So we've got a couple different model lines here. And as a general rule, as the numbers get bigger, the functionality of some sort or other gets better. So basically our GS1 products, GS10s, so GS105, GS1008, MG105, XMG105, etc., 1010 here, that's telling you that these are all unmanaged switches. So there is no management functionality. It's just plug them in and go. And the primary differences here are desktop, no PoE, desktop PoE, 2.5 gig ports, 2.5 gig ports with 10 gig uplinks. And then this is a 1 gig ports with 10 gig uplinks on it. And then our 1200 series here, so starting GS12 or XGS12, those are our very basic web GUI managed switches. So these are aimed more at that Soho space and have some very limited but basic functionality. They can do some basic QoS or some basic VLAN, and that's pretty much it. Other vendors will call these smart managed or smart switches or easy switches, a bunch of different names for them out there. So those are our sort of desktop Soho home type switches. And then when we get up to the 1000 and higher series, these are our more business oriented switches. So these are what most of you guys are going to be probably selling here. So the 1000 and 1100 series switches, these are our unmanaged switches. Some are desktop, some are rack mount that are aimed at this business space. 1900 series is going to be where we first get into pretty decent layer 2 features in the web GUI. Um, Although most of you will probably be looking at the 1915 or higher series. So basically everything 1915 up to the 3800 series here, these are all Nebula managed. And that also includes the 1350s. So if you're looking for cloud management, this is where you want to go. And again, basically as the numbers increment from 1900 to 1915 to 1920, et cetera, the features that are in there increase the amount of functionality you have. So generally a what would be traditionally a true layer 2 business class switch, that'll be our 1920 and 1930 series products. The 1920s are generally all going to be 1 gig products, where the 1930s generally have 10 gig uplink ports on them. That's the primary difference between those two. And then our 2220 series is our traditionally our best selling series. And this is your, you know, layer 2 plus, layer 3 light, whatever the industry is calling it these days. Switches that have not only cloud management, web GUI, but also a full CLI for management. And then jumping up here to the 3800 and 4600, that's where you find our true layer 3 aggregation, switches or switches for the central office type stuff. So we have this one series down here, which I'm sure you noticed, the 1350s, that aren't sort of in this, progressing stack of features. And that's because they're doing their own thing out here on their own. So these are a special series of switches that were originally designed specifically for those of you doing a lot of IPTV deployments. So these have a number of features that were added to them specifically for IPTV or IP cameras, IP security. Although you may find those features useful in other applications. So we'll talk about it really quick. These guys here are Nebula Flex Pro, so they do include 1 year Pro Pack, and some of their advanced features, if you're managing them in Nebula, do require you have an active Pro Pack license to use them. So some of the things they can do, normal Ethernet has a cap of 100 meters on your cable run. These guys here can do up to 300 meters, providing both data and PoE power. These guys have the ability to monitor connected devices. Um, and if those devices become non-responsive, these switches can automatically power cycle that port to help reboot the device and get it back online automatically without you needing to step in. And also on these switches here, if you make a configuration change, do a firmware update, and the device needs to reboot, PoE power will continue to flow while the switch reboots. So connected devices don't have to reboot and they're ready to begin resuming sending data as soon as the switch is fully back online. So we'll hit here on some of the key features here on our switches. And this is going to be basically on 1915 series and higher switches. So these can all be used in cloud or standalone mode. Um, Comprehensive lineup as far as the PoE offerings go, from those PoE plus to PoE plus plus, from, those eco power all the way up to full power PoE offerings. One of the nice things with our products is if you're not using Nebula, is that we have our own operating system called Zynos, and that's what's run on these switches. So that is something that sets us apart from many of our competitors. Many of our competitors are just taking switches from the chipset vendors, reference designs, their SDKs, and pushing out switches that way. So they're not really doing any customization. In our case, again, this is basically on the 1900 series and higher. We have Zynos, which is our own operating system and interface that we use on all of our switches. So what that means is the GUI is going to be basically the same between models. The feature naming is going to be the same between models. And the way you configure those ports and the way you set them up is going to remain consistent. Whereas many of our competitors, if they buy one switch is based off a Realtek chipset and another switch is based off a Broadcom chipset, they'll simply be running the Broadcom or Realtek SDK and reference design essentially out of the box with just some light skinning for the branding. So you will find things are handled differently based on the chipset or based on the generation of chipset that the individual switch is using. Where with our products, everything is going to be consistent between model lines and model numbers because we are running our own software on top and not just relying on what the chipset vendor or OEM is providing. And just to highlight here, similar to our APs, we put a lot of effort into making sure our hardware is going to last. Basically, all of our business class switches come with a lifetime warranty because of this. And just like, with our access points, only using solid state capacitors, um, spending a lot of time on thermal design to make sure that we don't have heat fatigue on the components, etc. So I do want to talk briefly here about PoE and how PoE works, because this does cause a high number of calls into our support team. So I did want to talk a little bit about this. So you'll see here to begin with here, we're talking about the different types of cable that might be out there, Cat 5e, Cat 6, and Cat 6a. So there is going to be some confusion here in regards to how much power they can deliver and how much speed they can deliver at different ranges. So Cat 5e is just fine for multi-gig up to your standard 100-meter limit. It can provide 2.5 and 5 gig just fine. And Cat 5e does support PoE++. This is often a common problem we run into. Cat 6 cables will provide up to 10 gig service, but not for the full 100 meters. Generally, it's about 55 meters is what you're hitting at. And then Cat 6A is what you need if you want to provide 10 gig copper for the full 100 meters. Now, I do want to highlight here that this depends a lot on the quality of the cables themselves, if they've been kinked, if they've been bent repeatedly, if people have been running carts over them because they run across the floor, etc. That quality of the cable can degrade from this, but as long as you've got nice clean runs, this is what you should expect to see. Another thing I did want to talk about a little bit here is that PoE power does drop off over distance. And again, it's the same thing where in general, the PoE power is going to work pretty good. In this case here, you will see here, if you're providing 15.4 watts PoE power out of the switch, it will drop at 100 meters down to 12.9 watts at the other side. PoE Plus is 30 watts of power and it can drop down to 25.5. And it may be worse if you have low quality cable or something's happened to damage the cable itself. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because we often run into this situation where people will say, hey, I bought 10 of your access points, 8 of them are working, 2 are defective. And it's not necessarily that 2 of them are defective, it's just 2 of them are on a bad cable run and something's causing the power to drop below what that access point needs to be able to boot up. It's actually a cable issue rather than a hardware issue. So it's something to keep in mind. If you find a couple devices aren't booting up, swap them to ports where you know things are booting up and see if they then work. And if they do, what that's telling you is there's something going wrong with your cable, and you may need to run a couple new lines of cable to replace the bad cable that's there. And then just to highlight here, we do offer, in addition to the switches themselves, we do sell SFP and SFP Plus modules for fiber, and we do sell DAC cables. So for those switches that do support direct stacking, these are the special fiber cables you would use to connect them together in the office or in the rack, so they can communicate with each other. And we do offer those rather than having to build your own. And then I want to use 2 slides here just to talk about multi-gig, because multi-gig is where everything's going. Eventually here, most people are moving to this now on new deployments. And the big driver for this has been Wi-Fi, right? Wi-Fi 6, Wi-Fi 6E, Wi-Fi 7, all of those provide throughput greater than 1 gigabit per second. So if you want to maximize the speed of your wireless network and you don't want your wireless users complaining, you probably do need to upgrade your switches to multi-gig. So this is just showing here our lineup of products that provide multi-gig or at least 10 gig uplinks on them. I won't go through all of them individually here. And then for some of the higher end Wi-Fi 6 and Wi-Fi 7 access points, they require greater than your standard 30 watts of power that's provided by PoE Plus, and do need switches or PoE injectors that provide PoE Plus Plus or up to 60 watts of power per port. So we've got quite a few switches here that have the ability to provide that. So for instance, our inexpensive XMG 105 HP, XMG 108 HP, they can provide PoE Plus Plus power and can power up one generally one access point, so not a lot. If you need more than that, you can jump up here to our XMG 1915 series or XMG 1930s, etc., which can provide PoE++ on more powerful PoE here for you. And then we also offer the ability here to do PoE injectors. So maybe you're just deploying a couple high-end Wi-Fi 7 access points. You don't want to replace your entire 24-port switch. You can simply put in line a PoE injector that's capable of providing that 60 watts of power. So we have a PoE 12-60W. It's got 5 gig in and out Ethernet ports and can provide PoE++ power out. And then we have our PoE 12.30W. It's a 2.5 gig multi-gig ports up to 30 watts of power. So that is it for switches. Moving on now to security. So this is a slide that is quickly becoming outdated, but I do want to talk on all of this here. So historically, our security products, we've had the USG Flex, the ATP, and then we launched the SCR series, which was then renamed to the USG Lite series. So I want to talk about this a little bit. Basically, the ATP series is going away. I think we've sold out of most local models, although there may still be stuff floating around in distribution. And the reason we did that is originally the USG Flex was our primary security gateway. And when ATP or Advanced Threat Management became available, we had a separate line of products that were designed to support that, the ATP series. So for those of you who don't know, ATP or Advanced Threat Management is the ability of your security appliances, at least on the back end, to sort of network together in the cloud to be able to self-identify zero-day threats and be able to classify new types of traffic faster than your traditional signature way of doing things had been. So USG Flex was your traditional signatures. ATP series was the new sandboxing cloud networking way of identifying threats. So what we did though, is we have on our USG Flex, we have given you the ability to buy a license that turns your USG Flex essentially into the ATP. So there's no more reason to keep the ATP hardware around. So it's all being phased out. On the low end, on the consumer side of things, that will become our USG Lite. We initially launched these as the SCR series, but for whatever reason, they decided to change the name from SCR to USG Lite. So going forward, all of the simpler, sort of more like a Ubiquity security gateway or a Netgear security gateway, these are going to be our USG Lite series that's designed to compete with these. This is more built off of your home networking Wi-Fi router with some additional security features built in type platform. And the USG Flex series going forward is going to be our primary firewall solution. Now, having said that, we are launching the H series or have launched the H series, and eventually the USG Flexes will all be USG Flex H series. So let's talk a little bit more about this just to. So as a general rule here, we've split this up to make it easier. So we are launching a USG Flex H50 series, and that's going to be our sort of basic true SMB type hardware. Most of you, though, are going to want something that is USG Flex 100 or higher, and that gives you full access to all of the UTM products. The USG Flex Gold enables those ATP type features. And then the USG Flex H series is basically the same thing, all of this stuff, but it is a new platform for us. So the H series is faster hardware, and it's a whole new software platform that's designed to be able to handle today's faster networks, right? People's internet connections are getting faster and faster. There's lots of people now, that, especially businesses, that have access to multi-gig fiber uplinks. So we need security gateways that can handle that, and that is our H series. Now, the challenge with the H series is not only is this new hardware, but new software, is it's taking time to implement and port all of those features from our standard USG Flex to the USG Flex H series. So many of those features are available today, and almost everything else should be available in April this year. So just a few months out. And once everything is basically on par feature-wise between the USG Flex and USG Flex H, the Flex series will get phased out in favor of the H series. But we've been keeping the USG Flex on here just because the H series isn't quite yet ready to take over. So one of the things I want to highlight here, and this is something that makes us different from some of our competition, is most of our competition, in addition to making security hardware, in addition to making the software that runs on the security hardware, they also try to be experts in content filtering, antivirus, IDP, et cetera, doing it all in-house. So our goal at Zyxel is to focus on what we do best, which is the hardware and the software. And that's what we do when it comes to the security UTM side of things. We partner with people that are good at doing that rather than trying to do all of that in-house. And we feel that makes us stand out and makes us perform better than many of our competitors. So you can see here a list of the different companies that we partner with to provide these different services. For instance, WebRoot provides our IP reputation to filter. Device identification is provided by Acme, right? Our cloud services are hosted by Amazon AWS. Antivirus and anti-malware are provided by Bitdefender and Trellix, etc. So one thing I do want to highlight here is many of our security products or services that are add-ons if you buy the standalone hardware. We do include a 30-day free trial of those services so you can test them out and use them without having to make any sort of hardware commitment or provide us a credit card or anything like that. So just to show here, we've got different security options that are available. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I will say here the gold licenses or gold security bundle, that is what turns your USG Flex into an ATP. And because there is some confusion on this is just showing you the differences in our USG Flex series. We sell them as a hardware only product where you get just the router or the firewall, and then we sell it as a bundle, which includes the licenses for 1 year. So this is just showing you here what happens if you have the hardware only versus the licenses. So no license needed for SPI firewall and advanced firewall rules. Um, Nothing required subscription wise to be able to deal with DDoS attacks, nothing special required to do VPN, etc. But things like anti-malware, antivirus, content filtering, sandboxing, etc., those do require that you do have active licenses to use those features. And then we've just got a few slides here. I'll just highlight some of the main features here we haven't really talked about that are available on most of the USG Flex. Basically everything USG Flex 100 and higher. So, content filtering, including filtering websites that are HTTPS encrypted, application patrol, the ability to create rules at the firewall based on the individual applications and features of those applications, rather than just having to use ports and traffic types and things like that. We have the ability to do collaborative detection and response, where the security gateway can coordinate with our W series access points to provide enhanced security on wireless users. Our SecuReport security reporting system, which makes it easy for you to see what's going on your networks. And then we've got a variety of other sort of software features that we can enable and turn on for you. Secure Wi-Fi. This turns our cloud managed access points, again, the W series, into cloud managed VPN appliances to make it easy to provide to end users to be able to connect to the business network from their home, just using one of our access points instead of using a dedicated router VPN appliance. The ability here to do the hotspot management. So out of the box, all of our USG Flex can provide controller management for a certain number of APs, and additional licenses will unlock additional APs that can be managed, as well as additional hotspot functionality for those of you doing like hotels or larger public networks. The ability to do SD or software defined WAN, ability to do device high availability, etc. So I did want to show this here. I know here in the US, Zyxel is not a household name because in the US we focused pretty much entirely on the ISP space for much of our history here. But in Europe, it's been different, where channel has been a much larger part of the business for a longer period of time. And as you can see here in Europe, at least according to IDC, we are the number three guy when it comes to sub $1,000 security appliances out on the market. So these days, everything now is tied to your Zyxel account. So we have one account that you use, and that gives you access to basically everything. If you're using Nebula, you log in using your Zyxel account. If you go to My Zyxel to manage your security appliances, you use that Zyxel account. So it gives you one account that sort of handles everything for you. So online license management, service portals, your reporting functionality, everything is tied together. So just to highlight here again, when it comes to network management, you have the flexibility of using our cloud managed network, Nebula, or you can use Zyxel One Network, which is a series of tools we have, which make it easier for you to manage your devices if they're running in standalone or traditional management mode. So this is just showing here, some of those tools that we have that are part of the Zyxel One network. So we have that APC controller, which is their wireless LAN controller that's built into our security appliances. We have the Zone utility, which is a software utility you run, which can detect all Zyxel One network products on a network, show you their IP address, give you links to access their web GUI, and let you do some other minor updates and stuff through them. And then Smart Connect, which allows our different devices to be able to detect each other. And so you can jump from the web GUI of one device to another pretty easily. I forgot this slide had animation, my bad. Another thing we've got out there for you is our Zyxel Education Center. So that's where you can go to learn more about our Zyxel products and get certified in being able to configure and use those. So you can see those there. Now, several of these tiers are paid tiers. If you're one of our Zyxel partners, we can hook you up with free access to many of these tiers, but you do have to talk to your sales guy. So if you get to that point where there's a paywall, reach out to Andy, Jacob, or David and let them know, and they can get you a key to get you in there to continue doing your training. And another thing I wanted to talk about here was our e-commerce platforms, because there is a lot of confusion about what does what. So we've got a couple different products that are out there. The main one here is going to be our Zyxel store. That is where we sell hardware directly, well, directly in quotes. Um, it's primarily just for end users out there who are buying hardware, buying onesies and twosies. This is actually something that fulfillment is done through Amazon. So that's an option that is out there. When it comes to licenses, we have what's called Marketplace. And again, this is for end users to buy your licenses. If you are one of our authorized partners doing resale, you should not be using Marketplace. And every month we keep running into some of you guys that are. Don't do Marketplace. You're basically paying full retail for licenses. If you are one of our partners, you want to use Circle. So there is a separate Circle sign-up process. I think it's just circle.zyxel.com. It'll take you to the application. You do have to be approved because we need to verify the person applying really is an authorized partner. And then it will allow you to buy your licenses online um, and get your partner discounts and get licenses basically instantly. Now, Circle does integrate with Nebula and it integrates with My Zyxel, making it easy for you to be able to buy licenses and apply those licenses to the devices. So one question we get is, well, normally I buy through distribution. Should I not buy through distribution? So as a general rule, buying through distribution for most of you, especially if you're a silver or gold partner, is probably the cheapest way to get licenses. Circle will get you below retail prices. It will get you some discount, but the main benefit of Circle is the integration with Nebula and My Zyxel to apply those licenses and get them instantly. So distribution, it probably takes a day or two to get your licenses, but that's going to be the best price. If you'd rather pay a little bit more and get them faster, Circle is the way to do that. So again, you apply for Circle to get access to it. And basically it gives you a single platform that again integrates with my Zyxel, integrates with Nebula, making it easy for you to buy those licenses. One of the nice tools you can do here is you can do alignment. So you can make it easy for all of your products. You know, a customer's got some Nebula licenses, they've got some security licenses, you know, you added some devices halfway through the year because they needed something more, you swap something out because it was defective, whatever it is, and you end up in a situation where you've got products expiring at different times throughout the year. With Circle, it makes it easy to figure out what licenses you need so everything expires during the same month at the same time, roughly. Um, and allows you to then buy those licenses or spit out a list of what licenses you need that you could then buy through distribution. And with that, everyone, I know it's been a long time, but that is the end of today's presentation. So two last things to talk about real quick. We do have a YouTube channel. There are lots of Zyxel YouTube channels. So the one here for the USA and Canada is Zyxel America channel. Almost all of our webinars are recorded and uploaded there. So if you miss a webinar or you think somebody else at your company should see one of these webinars, you will usually find it uploaded there within 24 hours of when the webinar took place. In addition to webinars, we have video case studies up there. We have best practices videos. We have product launch announcements, all sorts of stuff that gets posted up there. And then if you'd like to connect to us on LinkedIn, we are Zyxel US channel on LinkedIn. And there have been no questions, but I'll stick around for a minute here in case you want to type some up. You can send them in either using the chat or the question and answer part of the Zoom interface, and I will try to answer them for you. In the meantime, one last thing to point out here is we do have user forums available at forum.zyxel.com, in addition to a place to talk to other Zyxel users and installers. This is also where a lot of security announcements, firmware notes, things like that get posted first. Also, unlike a lot of our competition who has user forums, our R&D and product management teams do monitor those forums and occasionally will respond to questions and help you out with things as well. So it's a nice tool to have and to keep an eye on, on a periodic basis. Okay, I don't have any questions coming in, so I'm going to go ahead and end today's webinar. Thank you for joining us. We do webinars most Tuesdays and most Thursdays. Generally, Tuesdays are more tech-oriented, Thursdays are more overview type stuff. Today's sort of a swap of that general rule, but I hope to see you at one of those future webinars. Thank you.